Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 8 Tips and Traps of Networking When Job Searching. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm an Associate Director Office as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Questrom School of Business. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Boston University Alumni Association and is offered to our 300,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, the BU Alumni Association is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. It's important that we get your opinion on how we're doing, so we very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to you later today. We have alumni participating today from places like San Rafael, California, Key Biscayne, Florida, Prairie Village, Kansas, as far away as Nigeria, Morocco, and Switzerland, and a whole bunch of people from right here in Massachusetts. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your opinion on this program and everything that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you have any trouble at all with the audio or visual portions of this presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Adobe Connect directly. You might want to jot down this phone number. It's 1-800-422-3623. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat box that you see located below the slides at the bottom of your screen. We hope to get to as many questions as we can during today's webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter for the day. Joining us from just down the road in Arlington, Massachusetts is BU College of Engineering alumna Johanna Rothman. Known as the Pragmatic Manager, Johanna provides frank advice for tough problems. As president and founder of Rothman Consulting Group, she helps leaders understand issues, seize opportunities, remove impediments, manage projects, and develop leadership skills. Johanna is the author of 8 books on hiring and employment, including titles like Manage Your Job Search, and my favorite, Hiring Geeks That Fit. She's currently working on a new book about agile program management. Johanna also writes columns for Sticky Minds and ProjectManagement.com. She blogs on CreateAdaptableLife.com and offers content on 2 different blogs on her own website, which I encourage you to visit at jrothman.com. Johanna, thank you again for being with us today, and the floor is all yours. I'm going to go ahead and get your slides up, and then we can get off and running.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Okay, so you're going to tell me if you can't hear me, right?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Excellent, excellent. So welcome, everybody. I'm delighted that you are here. So let's talk about the problems with networking. I suspect that each of you knows that you absolutely need to network. Now, one of the things you might not know is that you need loose connections, people who are a degree or two away from you. And if you have been working for a while, and you might even have children, you might want to think about networking with your children's colleagues. I know this was a real surprise to me the first time it happened, but now that my kids are gainfully employed, I find that I actually network with them to meet some of their colleagues. So the loose connections are what will get you your next job. Now, I suspect that you might not be as geeky as I am. Okay, I come from the School of Engineering, so I'm already, I have the nerd flag, the geek flag. Many of you might have come from the School of Communications, where I suspect that you actually don't have that flag. So one of the issues with networking is, how do you network with authenticity? How do you do it so you're not feeling slimy? How do you do it so that people want to meet you and learn what you have to offer? Because that's the whole point of networking. If you are like me and you go to a ton of professional meetings every month, you often think to yourself, how can I get out of the house and go to yet another meeting? And the answer might be you don't have to. So you might want to think about, which meetings do I want to go to and which meetings can I not go to? One of the problems I see in technology a lot is that people are so shy or introverted, they think about going to these meetings and they do not. Because going to a meeting putting yourself out there, trying to network in this way where you're meeting new people whom you do not know at all seems so totally intimidating. So, before I get to the tips and their traps, whichever way you want to look at it, I actually want to know something about how long you have been working for a job. So Jeff is going to help me bring up the poll. And the question is fewer than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, more than a year, or you're just here because you're interested and you're not really looking for a job. Let's see, the results are still coming in. And I don't see anything changing. Oh, people are still doing stuff. So we'll let them do it for another few seconds. Yeah, people are still clicking. So Jeff, what do you think? Oh, we still have another one. I will use your guidance, Jeff, as to when we end the poll.
Sure, I'll go ahead and end that now. Thank you, everybody, for typing in with your results. We'll have another poll later. Make sure that you, instead of using the Q&A box, actually go ahead and click the one of the radial buttons that you see on the survey. All yours, Johanna.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So it looks as if about 35% of the people have been looking for a job for fewer than 3 months. 20%, well, 18.8, right? So about 20% is 3 to 6 months, 11% 6 to 12 months. 16% of you are looking for more than a year, and 18% of you are not currently looking for a job. So we have a typical, in engineering terms, a sign distribution where you have a bunch of people at the beginning, a bunch of people at the end, and some number of people in the middle. And for those of you who are not currently looking for a job, I hope that you take some of this advice the next time you want to even look for a mentor or look for a coach. Think about what you might want to do if you look for a job. Okay, so let's talk about your goals with your networking. For many of you, right, for everything other than the 18% of you who are not currently looking for a job, you do want a new job. Now, that is one goal for networking. There's something called background networking, where you try and learn about new people all the time. You try and meet new people all the time. And this is the kind of thing that you do when you invite people to connect with you on LinkedIn, when you meet somebody at a professional society meeting, and you say, let's connect, let's exchange business cards. You also might want to be thinking about your target list for your networking. So, especially if you're looking for a new job, let me introduce this notion of a target list. A target list is the 20 to 25 companies that you make a list out of, right? This is not thinking where you're waving your hands. No, you take a pen and you write on a piece of paper. If you must do it in a document on your computer, that's totally fine. But you actually write down the specific companies and or the specific people that you have in mind to network with. So if you're looking for a job, you need to have a target list, because otherwise you're just looking. And especially those of you who have been looking for 6 to 12 months or more than a year, if you do not have a target list, this might be why you're having trouble making the connections to find that new job. So think about a target list as we go through all of these tips and traps. So the first one I have is this notion of spray and pray, right? This is where you hear people all the time, and maybe you're one of these people, where you say, I have sent out 150 resumes. Nobody has even asked me for an interview. So if you are spraying and praying, don't do it. And also, do not send your resume or your CV to people who have not specifically requested it. This is one of the big problems. It used to be 25 years ago, maybe you could do this. You cannot do this anymore. And the reason you cannot do this anymore is that people, hiring managers and HR in particular, have become very, very picky. If you do not have exactly the right kind of technology skills on your resume, and it doesn't matter what kind of a job you're applying for, everyone has tools and technology on in the automated tracking system for the hiring managers or for HR. So if you do not have exactly the right tools and technology, they're going to reject your resume out of hand. And then, the people who aren't very nice won't even tell you why they're rejecting your resume. They won't even send you an email. They won't send you a postcard. They won't do anything. And that's because your resume does not hit those 5 or 6 or 15 or 25 points, which, is kind of stupid, but that's what they do. So you need to figure out who are the companies and people that you specifically want to target. And then you have to figure out how to target with your how to network with your target list. Sorry, I keep getting the target and the network confused. So do not spray and pray. Instead, figure out what companies do I want to work for, or what people do I want to work for, and then how do I find them? How do I connect with them? Right? That's the question. Now, this is a very common trap for people in technology, that it's very, very tempting to network from your office chair. And so you don't want to actually leave the house. You don't want to go to meetings. You just want to network from inside your office. And that's good for making LinkedIn connections. It's good for having conversations on an email list. But it's really, really hard to build rapport online. Rapport is that connection that you make with another human, right? It's a human to human connection. And that's where people say, oh, I'd really like to I wonder if I could get Don into this organization because I really like how he thinks. That's what you want people to think about when they think of you. And it's really hard to make warm connections. You can join a bunch of lists, you can join a bunch of LinkedIn groups, you can join any number of things that are online. But making that one-on-one human connection is really, really difficult. And it's those warm connections that become loose connections that allow you to network for your next job. So I have a couple of tips. One is to go to at least one professional meeting a week. Now, I say at least, and the reason it's a professional meeting and not necessarily a job seekers meeting is because the professional meetings have people who already have jobs. And those people might be able to introduce you into their company. Now, you might also want to go to a networking group meeting so that you can commiserate with other people, learn what they have done that's been good for their job search. But in the meantime, you have to leave the house. Now, something I did very early in my career as a consultant was I volunteered at a couple of different, and they were very different, professional organizations. And because I volunteered, I actually had a very high profile with these organizations. So you can't volunteer for 6 months and think that that's going to do with it. That's going to do it. Volunteering is a long-term kind of a thing. But if you start now, you will actually see that you get a lot of value out of your volunteering. So let's talk about the third trap. That when you actually leave the house to go to a professional meeting, you think you have to work a room. Now, I don't know about you. I think that the idea of even working a room is horrible. It does not play to my strengths. And I happen to be an extrovert, but I'm kind of shy. I don't want to just go around meeting people and telling them I'm looking for a job and giving them my business card. That really does not sit well with me. I want to be able to say, here's what I have to offer in case you need it. But I don't want to work a room. That's just not what I want to do. So Jeff is saying to me there are audio problems. Oh, okay, cleared up now. So one of the things that happens is that if you're an introvert, you you might not want to meet people at all because it's just so foreign to the way you think. Introverts are not necessarily shy. They're the people who need to think in order to speak. And extroverts are not necessarily loud and gregarious. They're the people who need to speak in order to think. Okay, so it's all about the thinking. If you think first and then speak, you're an introvert. If you speak first in order to think, you're an extrovert. Now, the way this happens is you might meet people and you might say, it's nice to meet you, and then you're stuck if you're an extrovert. You have no idea what to say because you haven't thought it through in advance. So this is where you might say, what do I want to say, right, to prepare in advance for meeting people? You might want to say, what do I have to offer? How do I want to start a conversation? How do I want to help people understand what I have to offer without being slimy and in their face? So if people say, what do you do? Which is a very common thing, right? When you meet people, you can say, I'm between jobs right now, and I'm looking for something like this. And that you say it, and it's a 20-second thing, and that's it. On the other side of this, if you're an extrovert, you might say, I want to think about this before I start to meet people so I don't blabber on at them because I need to speak in order to think. So when people say, what do you do? And you say, I'm looking for a job in this area. And then you say, what do you do? Right? So you turn it back to the other person. If you practice this stuff, I like the idea of rehearsals. And then you don't have to look in the mirror to rehearse. It's very helpful if you do this with another person. But I often just rehearse to my computer, right? Because my computer is not going to talk back to me. And I say, I'm Johanna Rothman. I help leaders and managers do reasonable things that work. And then if people want to know more, I can say it's all in the service of releasing products, getting products out the door. And then that's it. I don't have to say anything else. I have said everything I need to say. If people are interested in what I have to offer, they will ask me questions. If they're not interested in what I have to offer, there will be a pause. And at that pause, I can say, so tell me, what do you do? So see, this is a different way of thinking about, quote, working the room. Now, one of the things I have is when I go to a professional meeting, I have goals for my meeting. I want to meet some number of people, and that number is a minimum of 3. If you're at a dinner meeting, I want to meet everyone at the table. I want to meet the speaker. So, and I already talked about volunteering. So think about what you need to do so that you network with authenticity when you're in person. So, Jeff, do we have any questions right now before I continue?
Yeah, we do. Alec actually chatted in with a good question. You've talked a little bit about, volunteering at professional organizations, and you felt like that was a good experience. He just wanted to know if you could talk more about what kind of organizations, what kind of professional organizations that you had experience with, and also maybe even I would add, how would you research those?
So everyone has professional organizations in their field. So my field has been software development, software quality, software process improvement, all that stuff. And back when I was starting my consulting business, I volunteered for about 10 or 12 years at Boston Spin, the Software Process Improvement Network. And what I did there, I was the program chair. And because I was the program chair, I never had to stand for any election. It was an appointed position, and nobody ever wanted it. Right? When you're the program chair for professional meetings, you often find that it's an appointed position. Nobody else wants it. And you get to meet all kinds of people. You get to meet the speakers. You get to ask people in the room, what would you like to see? What would you like to hear? And so it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of meeting people, and it provides you a lot of um, feedback about what's going on in the field and connections, at least with the speakers. So this is I did this for a number of years. If I was starting my business now, I would probably try and volunteer at the PMI, the Project Management Institute, right? The local Boston chapter, or the Central Mass chapter, or wherever you have a chapter near you. If you're in a strictly development technical position, you might look for a Java users group or some other user group that has to do with the technology that you're doing. If you're in some other field, I don't know enough about the other fields, but I'm hoping that that's enough information. So look for professional organizations. There are HR professional organizations, interior design, you name it, there's a professional organization for your field. And that's what you want to do. And my big tip is be a program chair for the meetings. Get the speakers, and that way you have lots more people in your network. Okay, so I'm going to continue. One of the things I find is that when I talk to people who are job searching, they network in all the same places. So they have one or two professional organizations that they go to every month. They might have a networking group for other people who are finding jobs. Now, here's the thing. You want to do this because you want to get people to know you on a regular basis, right? So when I went to the Boston Spin, and I actually was a member of the Association for Software Quality, for ASQ, whatever it's called. I don't know. Um, whatever. It's not software quality. It's the Society for Quality. I haven't been a member for so long, I forgot. So when I was a member of the American Society for Quality, I met lots of people, some in manufacturing, some in construction, some in regulatory uh, organizations, all kinds of things that I would never have met if I had stayed with just software quality. And I needed to let those people know what I could do. So I had to meet them and see them on an ongoing basis for many, many, well, those were dinner meetings. So I was going to say many rubber chicken meetings. So, but you have to look back at your networking every so often. And I recommend you do this actually at the end of every week or so. You say, are my meeting people on my target list? Are the people that I need to meet or the companies that I want to get to know on my target list? Are they represented at any of these meetings? Because if not, I have to figure out where those people go to meet other professional people. So if you always network in the same places, you're not necessarily going to find the people on your target list. So this is really important. You want to see, how do I do that? Now, the tip that I have is that you think about one new meeting or one new meetup every single week. Now, for some of you, you might have kids at home, you might have a lot of other responsibilities. You want to say, is this the kind of thing I want to do? Do I want to go to something new every single week? That is a question only you can answer. I do not have the answer for you. But you need to think, am I meeting the people on my target list? If I am not meeting the people on my target list, I have to change something about my networking. Right? I might want to add something, I might want to subtract something, but I have to change something. So I would like you to consider, what might you need to change, especially if you have been looking for a job for more than 6 months. Now, a lot of you, I suspect, feel as if all you do is network. You go to meetings 2 or 3 nights a week, you do this 3 or 4 weeks out of the month, and all you're doing is networking. So what I would like you to consider is, are you networking in the right places? And do you have goals for your networking? This is where if you have, again, I'm kind of geeky, so this works for me. I have a specific number of people I want to meet at every meeting. I want to sit with people, some of whom I know and don't know. Um, I want to think. I want to think about my networking and think is it useful for me? How is it useful for me? And are there places that I could change what I do to make it more useful? If you go to a meeting and you are not meeting people at that meeting, right? If you do not come away with 3 new business cards every meeting, or whatever number is the right number for you, then you are not using your networking time to your best advantage. Also, it's possible that your job has changed, right? The job that you had is no longer the job that people are hiring for. So listen to what people have as their titles in these meetings. Are there titles that sound anything like yours? Are there titles that sound kind of like yours but pretty different? This is where you need to inspect and adapt. You want to think about, am I looking for a job that no longer exists? Am I looking with people who are not going to be able to help me find a job? Am I looking where the people on my target list are trying to go? So those are at least 3 questions. And if you also have specific goals for your networking, you will be able to do better networking when you go to a professional meeting. Oh, and then reflect on that after you've done it for a couple of weeks and see if you're meeting new people or quote better people for your target list. Now, this is when I first started talking about having to manage your job search. I met a lot of other people who said, I don't know where the time goes every day. I start thinking I'm going to look for a job. I spend 20 minutes at it, and all of a sudden, I realize that I've made cookies for the kids, and I did a load of laundry, and I have to start driving at 2 in the afternoon, and I have all this other stuff that's so more important in my life. Well, you do have a life. You have other people in your life. Maybe you have children. Maybe you have parents. Maybe you have a dog. I mean, you have stuff that you need to do to maintain your life. And you should have this stuff to maintain your life, because otherwise you can go a little nutso. And if you did not see results from your networking meetings, maybe you have stopped going to meetings. Why? Because you want to have dinner with the kids. You want to help with homework. You want to reconnect with your mom. Right? There's all of these reasons that you're not going out at night to professional meetings. And it is a problem. All of the professional meetings are at night. So, because everyone else, all those people have jobs. So my question to you is this. Are you putting yourself first? In a job search, in a job hunt, if you are not putting yourself first, you will not find a new job. Now, how does this work for the rest of your life? One of the things you can do is make a commitment to yourself that at 9 a.m. every day, you will job search for 3 hours, right, until noon. And then you will have a lunch break, and you will job search for another 2 hours until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. If you are job searching for 5 hours every day, right, taking phone calls, figuring out what meetings you want to go to, all of that stuff, you are probably doing as much as you can. Now, what about the evening meetings? Well, in that case, maybe you don't have to go those other 2 hours in the afternoon. Maybe your 3 hours in the morning is good enough. You take a break, you spend it with the kids, you spend it with other people, and then you go back to your job search at night. You need to track your time for a week and see how much time you spend on your job search really. If you are taking breaks to put a load of laundry in, or taking breaks to start cooking, or taking breaks to drive kids, and I was the official driver for my family for a very long time. So I know how much time that sucks out of your day. It's just horrible. For those of you who are still there, my sympathies. And in the meantime, you have to put yourself first. If you do not put yourself first, you will be in trouble. You will not see how to actually get a new job. So let me ask Jeff, are there any questions right now?
We actually have a ton of great questions that have come in, and I think, seeing as how you're on trap number 6, Johanna, if it's okay with you, I'd say let's have you finish up your presentation, then we'll just do a big Q&A session at the end. I think we're going to have plenty of time to get through all of them. So does that sound okay with you?
Oh, it's perfectly fine with me. Okay, people, keep telling Jeff your questions and I'll address them at the end. And if not, I will always answer them on my blog and maybe Jeff can email them to me. Okay, so let's talk about the trap number 7, where you feel like an imposter. If you have been out of work for 6 months or more, it is very, very difficult to remember how great you were. And I am sure that you actually are great. This is not a question for me. I'm sure that you are. So you have to figure out, how do I get my esteem back up? Now, there's one major tip, which is make sure that you have value in your LinkedIn profile and on your resume. And the way you have value is by putting in numbers. Say, I worked on this project and we saved the company X number of dollars, or our customer loved us, or we were able to acquire 50,000 new customers, or we saved something. When you put numbers in your LinkedIn profile and on your resume, your resume pops. The numbers are what make you show your value to other people. I also have a blog post, something like defining your value. I cannot remember what it is, but if you want, I can certainly email that to you later. You want to think about, how do I put numbers on my resume and in my LinkedIn profile so that I stand out from other people, I show my value. So that's a piece of it. The other piece of it is, if you feel like an imposter, you might not be doing enough on your job search. And I can hear some of you rolling your eyes. I'm working on my job search every day. How can I not be doing enough? Let me rephrase that to finishing things. If you have little tiny tasks, and I happen to think that personal Kanban is the way to organize a job search, then you can finish something on your job search. Hopefully a couple of things in the morning, a couple of things in the afternoon. So I'm talking about really, really tiny things that you finish. That means that you don't say, rewrite my resume. You say, rewrite my resume draft 1. Or you say, put in value for my most recent job. And that's it. That's your to-do. That's it. You don't do any more. So you have to get your self-esteem back up so that you do not feel like an imposter anymore. All right, so let me talk about not having a complete LinkedIn profile. If you have your name and a list of places that you worked without your picture, without a really fine description of your previous work, you have a zombie profile. Do not be a zombie. Nobody wants to hire a zombie. It's horrible. Now, one of the really nice things about LinkedIn is that LinkedIn tells you when your profile is complete. So there are a number of things that you have to have on your LinkedIn profile. You have to have a headshot. I say it's you and only you. Now, the reason why you want a picture on your LinkedIn profile is that hiring managers are 7 times more likely to click on you if you have a picture. So you have to have a picture in the profile. Not on your resume. Well, unless you live outside the U.S. If you live outside the U.S., then all bets are off as to what you can have on your resume. Now, on LinkedIn, you also want to have a headline. I happen to think that you should say something like your most recent job title or your job title that you would like to have, comma, looking for new opportunities. Right? So I might say project manager looking for new opportunities, or program manager, or agile portfolio manager looking for new opportunities, right? Those are the kinds of things that will help you get recognized. You want to have your contact information and you want to name your profile. You do not want Johanna Rothman 32673, right? You want to have just Johanna Rothman. And the same thing for all of you. So if there is anyone named Bob Smith, I'm sure that there are many other Bob Smiths. I was very lucky. My parents gave me a very unique name. If your parents were unable to do that for you, then you might have to say Bob Smith, comma, Massachusetts. Bob Smith, comma, something or other. And then have that as your profile name. If you have a website, name your website. Don't just use personal website. Say Bob Smith's blog. So you need to have a bare bones profile that talks about the value of everything that you have done on your LinkedIn profile. Now, recommendations are also really, really important. You want to give them and then ask for them. So write a great recommendation. Endorsements are a measure of popularity, so that's not really useful anymore. Now, Jeff, can you help me with this poll, please? The next poll is the questions are, please rate your LinkedIn profile. I hate LinkedIn and don't use it. I don't have a picture on my profile. My profile is pretty good. LinkedIn tells me my profile is an all-star, or I have not somehow put in anything here that works for you. So I'm seeing that there's still a number of people that do not use LinkedIn. And Jeff, I will depend on you as to when we close the poll for voting. Okay, so 6% of you say you hate LinkedIn and don't use it. I hope that you're not looking for a job. I really do. Or if you have a personal website, that would be fine, right? Because then people don't need LinkedIn, although they have to find you somehow. Now, 13.8% of you say, I do not have a picture on my profile. Get with the program. Put a picture on your profile. I'm sorry, it's just that way. Make it a picture of you, make sure you're smiling, and then you're okay. 45% of you say, my profile is pretty good. And that's good, but 25% of you say, LinkedIn tells me my profile is an all-star. Finish your profile so that you become an all-star. And 9.9% of you say none of the above, so at some point we should have a conversation about what that means, because I'm not altogether sure. Thank you so much, Chef. So let me go to here. Now, this is the way to show your value. For every single line on your resume, you want to explain what you did. Now, there's something called the value action method. What value did you provide? What action did you take? And what method did you use? So the nice thing about LinkedIn especially is you are not limited to 2 pages, right? You can have your LinkedIn profile be as long as you would like. So I have this old thing for 26 years ago. I was the software project manager for a Lisp on a chip at an old company I worked for. If I use the value action method, I can say, as the software project manager for the new Lisp on a chip, I should say product, I encourage collaboration at all levels of the organization. This allowed us to deliver milestones monthly, see it's a number, to see the product evolve, and to build trust. Externally, this allowed us to meet our aggressive 9-month trade show deadline. Now, if I really wanted to make this pop, I could say this product saved the organization from going bankrupt, because it did. So that was even more value for the organization. Now, you are not going to be me. You have to figure out what your particular value is and then manage that. But you want to use English sentences, especially on LinkedIn. Because if you cannot figure out the value for anything that you have, then maybe it does not belong on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile. Uh, you want to think about social networking because it allows you to make that personal connection with other people. Right? It gives you a warm connection. It allows you to think of your target list. It allows you to start building rapport. It allows you to say to somebody, I'd like an informational meeting. And that way I have a shot of being able to make it to the people on my target list and meet them in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully in person before you actually have to ask for an interview. So I would like to have questions now. Look at this, because it's all about the value. You cannot provide value to any organization unless you show the value on your resume or your LinkedIn profile. And you have to be yourself. There's this business of glad handing and this business of small talk. That doesn't work for me, and I suspect it doesn't work for you. So you want to think about how you network authentically. Okay, Jeff, I'm ready for the very first question.
Awesome. We have some great ones. Thank you again, everybody, for chatting in with these. And I'll apologize in advance if we don't get through all of them. We do have some really good ones. Before we dive in, I want to ask, Hung, you chatted in with an interesting question about job titles in relationship to career switches, and I'm not sure that I fully understand your question. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit more and chat back in. For everybody else, if you've got a question to get in, just do me a favor and try to keep it short to maybe one sentence or a sentence and a half even. Johanna, obviously right here on your screen, it says at the bottom, always be authentic. I know that we touched on this quite a bit during your talk, but I'm trying to see here. Julia chatted in with a good question about what does not being authentic mean? And can you elaborate more on the characteristics of inauthentic speech?
Sure, if you're not authentic, then you say, I have to be somebody other than who I am when I go to a meeting, when I meet with people, when I shake their hands for the first time. If you feel as if you're putting on a show for people, you're probably not authentic. So you really want to say, what do I need to do for me to make sure that I am authentic, to make sure that I represent myself in the best way possible? Now, in Manager Job Search, I have a number of tips about this, but here's one right now. Think about all of the ways that you have provided value in the past, and then think of a very short story that you can tell people. So if you've been a project manager, you might say, I help people figure out how to collaborate across the organization and release the product on time in budget. That's a pretty rare occurrence. So you want to think about how do you want to frame that? So first of all, people believe you. Secondly, you believe yourself. And thirdly, so it's understandable in 15 or 20 seconds or a minute when you meet people off the cuff. So this is why I talk about something called the stories of your career. These are not made up stories. These are real stories. But if you're not thinking about the stories of your career, then you are not prepared to be authentic and have an authentic conversation and build rapport with people when you do network. I hope that answered the question.
Sure. Matthew and Rochelle have both chatted in with a question that I think is related, so I'm going to go ahead and try to combine them. Can you expand a little bit more on, let's say you're going to a networking meeting. How should job seekers present themselves when one is changing industries? And then also, can you talk a little bit more about how to present yourself if you were fired or let go from your last job? How do you present that in a positive light?
Okay, so let's talk about the firing first. If you're staying in the same industry, then you can say things such as, "We disagreed on a number of things," because I bet you did. If you were laid off as opposed to fired, you can say, "There was a layoff and I was caught up in the layoff." Now, if they fired you for cause, um, make sure you understand why they fired you. Sometimes, so I got fired from my last in-house management position because I was too open as a manager. I disagreed with senior management. I was advocating for stuff that they didn't like. So what I said to people, and I started my consulting business. At the very beginning of my consulting business, people said, why are you a consultant instead of being an in-house senior manager?" And so what I said to people was, I moved too fast for the organization. And in the consultant, this is great. But as an internal manager, it's not so hot. So we had a bunch of disagreements, and it just seemed more reasonable for me to use what I thought was a feature and do this as a consultant as opposed to an in-house manager. So you want to put a spin on it that says, "We disagreed," or "I don't like the way they were doing stuff and I said it too often." But you want to say something that shows your competence. And if they probe more, you want to also be able to say, "Here's why I was already looking for a new job," or "I realized that the feedback I was getting was not the feedback I wanted," all that stuff. Now, when you want to change jobs to a different industry, you need to somehow make the help your audience understand, how do we see what you did in that industry to how it applies to the next industry. So this is where you want to think about all of your qualities, not your technical skills, as relevant to the new industry. Are you mature? Are you able to get along with people? Are you able to write memos and emails? What are the things that you have to offer this new industry? So for both of those cases, make sure that you talk about what you have to offer and also say, it was agreement, it was a something, and then try not to talk about it. That's in the past and you want to go forward.
Thanks. And Hung, I see that you
Next one, Jeff.
elaborated on your question, and I think that Johanna just sort of addressed it. Yeah. So Hung, thank you for chatting back in, and hopefully you got the answer you're looking for. Let's. So a related question again from Lisa. Let's say that you're somebody who has worked in a job or an industry for a while, and it left you maybe even more confused than before. How do you use networking and networking meetings to help you figure it out, what it is that you want to do or what your next job could and should be? Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so this is where something that you might want to do in Manage Your Job Search. There's something called a career timeline. And you actually look at the ups and downs of your career since you've been working. And the reason I am suggesting that you look at this is because there might have been aspects of your previous jobs that you really liked, but they were only aspects. And then there were aspects of previous jobs that you were not so hot about. So this is all about the company culture, what the job entails. Let me see if I can give you an example. I know a project manager in the healthcare industry. Now, the problem with being a project manager in the healthcare industry is that project management is not valued as much in healthcare as it is in product organizations. In product organizations, project management is not a staff job, it's a line job. But in the healthcare industry, it's a staff job. So a staff job means Your support, right? You're not on the front lines getting the product out the door. In healthcare, doctors and nurses are on the front lines getting the product out the door. Anything that you do as a project manager is a support function. So maybe you like the job when it's a support function. Maybe you like it when it's a line job. So there's that difference, and you won't know until you actually go back and analyze your jobs. So, what about that previous job was valuable to you? What about that previous job was, maybe not so much? So, until you go back and do a timeline or analyze your jobs to say, this particular job had these kinds of characteristics. That particular job had those kinds of characteristics, and it's some from column A and some from column B. That will allow you to create your target list so you know what kinds of companies and people you want to network with. Okay, Jeff.
Great. Daniel has asked a good question about follow-up. So, Daniel's experience, he finds it pretty easy to collect business cards, but finds that if you can get too many, it's really difficult to follow up. I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer that question, but what are your thoughts on that?
So my answer is always follow up with people by adding them to your LinkedIn list. Right? That's the very first thing. So ask to connect with them on LinkedIn. Remind them where you met. We met at this meeting on Tuesday night. It's now Wednesday morning. And I would say connect with everybody right away. Now, who of those people are either on your target list or can help you with your target list? If they're background networking, that's great. You don't have to ask them for anything else. But if there are people who can help you get to your target list, you can send them an email then and say, I think that this particular job in this particular company might be a good fit for me. Or just this particular company might be a good fit for me. Do you have half an hour or 20 minutes for an informational discussion or an informational interview? And leave it at that. Almost everybody will take the time to have a 20-minute or half an hour conversation. Not everybody, but almost everybody. So do something with those business cards, import them into LinkedIn, send an email to people who can connect you with your target list or your target and see what it buys you. What were you going to say, Jeff?
You had talked a little bit about sort of being strategic in your networking and setting a goal, and I would have thought that you said something along, and I apologize, I was actually kind of reading through some of the questions while you were answering that one, but I think just to keep it manageable for yourself, and knowing if you're going to go to a large event and you collect a lot of business cards, maybe just try to focus on the people that are most relevant for your search and for your networking goals.
Well, certainly the follow up with them. Yeah, but I still say add everybody to your LinkedIn list. Okay.
No, I don't disagree with that
next?
at all. Claudia's asking a question that I think you've touched on this too, but she's identifying as an introvert and finding that large groups of people are not her cup of tea, and any other recommendations for ways that she can network with people. Johanna, before you jump in, I need to put in a plug to everybody here today. We've talked quite a bit about LinkedIn, and many of our guests today might know that we've had a couple webinars just focusing on LinkedIn. So I want to refer everybody to our on-demand library. You can find that on our website at bu.edu/alumni/webinars, where we have two that I think are really valuable. One of them is, again, hosted by a BU alumnus named Dan Green, who works at LinkedIn, and he offered a session called How to Build and Leverage a Powerful BU Network on LinkedIn. And Claudia, I think this is perfect for you. It goes over the LinkedIn alumni tool, which will actually allow you to help seek out BU alumni at companies that you might be interested in industries that you might be interested in, and connect with them on a one-to-one level. And as certainly as Johanna has said, the goal would be to meet that person on LinkedIn, but then follow up for more. Johanna, any other thoughts about how for introverts to meet people more one-on-one than in huge groups?
Yes. So one thing you can do is bring a buddy with you so that you have someone to talk to. The other thing is Um, and I do this, walk up to 2 or 3 people, not 7, not 8, 2 or 3 people, and stand there for a minute. You probably have a name badge on, and when they finish talking about whatever they're doing, they will say, "Oh, it's nice to meet you," and then you can introduce yourself. If you walk up to a group of 7 or 8 people, it's really hard to get a word in edgewise. So limit your little groups to 2 or 3, maybe 4. And if everybody is in groups of 7 or 8, which is unlikely but is possible, maybe you network at the table if it's a dinner meeting. Maybe you just network with one person when you sit down. You can network one on one. You can introduce yourself one on one. You do not need to go up to a huge group of people and say, "Hi, my name is Claudia." No, don't do that. You're going to make yourself nuts. So find little groups of people, 2s or 3s, and walk up to those. If you also find people who look a little lost, they're probably just like you. And you can find one of those people and talk to that person. So start small. Start with one, maybe 2 or 3. Avoid the 7 or 8s.
Awesome. Maria's got an interesting question here that she's requested informational meetings with connections with authentic interest, but she's feeling like often the requestees, the people that she's trying to connect with, are really just asking that Maria is asking them for a job, which she's not doing. So can you speak a little bit, Johanna, to how, what's that balance between, connecting with somebody but not over pressuring them, making them feel like you're just out of the gate asking for a job?
So that can be your very first sentence in an email. Or an in-mail. You might say, um, or maybe your second sentence. I noticed that you're connected to so and so, or I'd like to talk to you about jobs in this area in general. I am not looking for a job from you. Actually, say that in your email. This is really an informational interview about jobs in this industry or these types of jobs. So be more specific about what you want in an informational interview. If you're more specific, people are much more likely to say, "Okay, I understand. I can either help you with this much information, or you might want to talk to a different person." So say you're not looking for a job from them, and say what you are looking for. Right? That specificity is really important.
Great. Before we wrap up, I want to thank people. Johanna, I know I only told you once, but we had your audio would go fuzzy a few times. So I just want to thank everybody as we sort of powered through those few seconds where Johanna sounded like a robot. Julia has Julia has asked a really good question. You touched on this a little bit, but could you expand a little bit more? When you go to a networking meeting, Johanna, do you have a list of questions in mind that you can sort of tap into when you run into those uncomfortable pauses in conversation? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I do. I'm one of those people who, if I'm looking for a job or I'm looking for more consulting, I have stories I can tell about myself if people ask, and then I tend to have 3 or 4 questions that are icebreakers that also allow people to tell me more about what they do. So I typically ask people that I don't know, tell me about your worst problem this week. Because you want to get them talking about them, right? In some ways, looking for a job is like dating, although we don't have any of the dating part along with it. But people really like to talk about themselves. And then do not help them unless they ask for help. Now, you might say, "Oh, I had exactly the same thing in my most recent job or in 2 jobs back. Did you want to hear I about how I solved this problem?" And they might say, "No, I'm just venting." And then you can laugh and say, "Yeah, I understand. Not a problem." But if you have questions like that, if you actually think about behavior description questions that you can ask people as you just walk up and talk to them, then you are you are helping to frame a great conversation. For those of you who don't know, a behavior description question is of the sort: tell me about a time when, give me an example of, and then you want to talk about whatever you think is interesting to them.
Great. We're running right up against the 1 o'clock hour. I want to apologize to Karen and Matthew and Bob and Manal. We're not going to get to your questions today. But Johanna, you had said, people could go ahead and contact you afterwards. I also have people who are wondering if they can get their hands on a copy of your slides. I understand sometimes they're sort of proprietary things about that. But can you just real quickly say what the best way for people to get back in touch with you might be?
Absolutely. So send me an email, jr@jrothman.com. If you're not sure about that, go to jrothman.com and there's a contact thing there. I will be posting the slides on SlideShare. And if you're interested, please link with me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Joanna, it's no secret that networking is such an important part of any job search. You've laid out a tremendous sort of map of things to do and not to do for our alumni. So on behalf of the BU Alumni Association, I can't thank you enough for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's really been fun being here.
That's great. My thanks also go out to all of our guests for participating. I hope you plan to join us in June. We're actually going to be launching a new kind of webinar series. We're calling it BU Industry Insiders, and each month we'll ask a BU alum and leader in their field to offer insight about a particularly important or impactful topic. For June, we're going to be focusing on cognitive computing and big data analytics. You can sign up for that webinar now on our website at bu.edu/alumni. As always, if you or any BU alumni you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar or have a topic you'd like to showcase for BU Industry Insiders, feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email. I'm at JT, as in Thomas, Murphy, at bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening wherever